Today we're going to be filleting and prepping this beautiful brown trout that one of our customers brought in for us. He's got like one of the only rights to fish on the River Tess. So it's a really small fishing right. It's only reserved for like 6 or 7 people at the moment, because trout it's a managed population in these waters, but it's also caught for sport. But basically the main 2 trout that he gets are river trout and rainbow trout. And this is a river trout or a brown trout, common trout. Beautiful flavour. Like the way that the river works, it's got a really clean bottom. It's a limestone river, so the water is incredibly crystal clear. And you know, trout often gets that bad rep of being, I don't know, tasted like mud because it eats at the bottom of the river. But this one is, you could compare it to like a beautiful farmed or wild salmon. So first of all, what we're going to do is just go into the belly, being super, super careful that we don't catch the gut trap. Just very, very gently try and go through with as little damage to the fish as possible. Because what you really don't want is all that bacteria from the fish's guts escaping into the beautiful meat of the fish. It's best just to use your hands for this. But there is no real glamorous way to cut a fish. The best thing to do is just to try and keep your fish clean. Okay, so you can see we've got a nice clean cavity there. And then what we're going to do is just really nicely dry all that out as well. And then really important that you keep your board clean as well throughout this process. So whenever you're prepping a fish, it's beautiful and fresh like this, we're looking for a slime on the fish. That means that it's spent its days at the bottom of a beautiful river, and that should coat the fish all over. We're looking at the eyes, so they should be crystal clear, beautiful and like iridescent, and then also the gills. So that basically the vibrant colour of the gills indicates, you know, almost like how much oxygen's left in there. So basically the clearer and more pristine, the better. This fish is still in rigor mortis as well, so it's nice and stiff as a board, so you know it's come out of the river within the last 48 hours. So take our knife here and follow it around the head. Flip it over. Go through here, wasting as little of the meat as possible. So sometimes the neck can be a bit tricky to get through. And there's the head. So we've still got the gills in there like everything else. We can cook this up, take the gills out, and it's still good to eat. Just going to flip the board quickly. And then we can start cutting down the length of the fish. Really simple, almost, it's very similar to a salmon. You just need to find the spine and then just follow it all the way down. So it should be a really simple, quick. And you see here we've damaged the flesh very little. It's holding together really nicely. And then all you do is just flip over and then just work through on the other side. Cool, so we've got all this. Now most people now, they wouldn't do anything with this. But what you can do is you can just take a spoon. You can go up the side of that fish and you get this really amazing meat. So this is really common in Japanese cuisine, that almost every salmon that gets processed in the UK, the bones eventually end up being scraped like this meticulously. And it's some of the sweetest meat, it's right next to the bone. This could be used for anything that you've got. You could use this in a tartare, you could cure it, lightly marinate it, or to be honest, you could just eat it raw. It's really super, super fresh and super delicious. And still you can use this for stock. Awesome, so now we've got our fillets. What we want to do is just follow this rib cage all the way down the length of the fish. When you're doing it, you want to try and do it in one motion. It's common when you're prepping fish that you want to be super, super careful so you don't lose any of the valuable flesh. The more careful you are and the more strokes you do, the worse often the end result is. So it's just super important close to the bone. And then if you not get every bone off, it's sometimes a little bit trickier with smaller fish, you can take them off just with a pair of fish tweezers. Basically, when the bones are coming out, they're going with the grain of the fish. So you can see the flesh of the fish is going this way. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to pull it out that way, you want to go with the grain. Gently tease it out. And that's what we want. And then all the way down that length of the fish. So the bones usually finish about here. So towards the tail end of the fish, there's not the same structural bones that keep the fish's body moving. So the bones usually end up here. And then just run your finger along one last time to make sure you got everything. Cool. So once we've got the fish to this stage, then what we need to start to do is just remove the skin. When you go in here, you just want to go above the bloodline. So if you can see there, that's what we call the bloodline of the fish. So take all of that bloodline off with the fish. That's fine to do, and you can cook that on the fish. But what we do in the restaurant, just to make sure we've got a really pristine fillet, is we literally just take a really sharp knife and just go above that bloodline. Slightly trickier to learn, but the finished product is so much cleaner than the other. So you can see there, you've left the bloodline on the fish, and that's beautiful clean flesh. So that's our fillet, deboned, ready to portion or cook whole, whatever you want. I just lay that onto the ice bath. Now the skin is still equally good to use. So obviously we didn't descale it before we prepped it, but the best and easiest way to do that is just to descale it now. So really you can actually eat every part of the fish. You can deep fry and dehydrate the scales. They're super delicious. You cover them with salt and vinegar powder. They taste like almost like sort of like fish scratchings you get from the fish shop. They just need a really good rinse. And there you go.
I'm just going to show you how we plate up our new trout dish, which is a dish of cured trout, second-class green tomatoes, basil and pickled lemon. One of the key elements around this dish is using green tomatoes. So green tomatoes are lovely, they're in season right now, but what we're actually not going to use them fresh. We buy the second-class ones. So the other day, for example, I picked up 12 boxes of green tomatoes, came out of the market, new Covent Garden market, but they were too soft and too bruised for other customers to use. So all we've done, we've cut them into quarters, blanched them very quickly, peeled the skin off, taken the seeds out, and then I've just roughly chopped them, and we've added the juice back in. Can you see that? Is we just put it into the oven, dehydrated it, and it took about 3 days constantly in the oven, and the water in the tomato is just evaporating, and the flavour is condensing, and we're left with this really, really intense basically a green passata style sauce. We've then added some basil, parsley and mint, which we've blanched, and then we've blended that with gellan and made it into a ketchup, and that's going to be a key element of our dish. So we'll get back to that in a second, but right now we're just going to cut the trout. So we're going to take 5 to 6 slices of our trout. So we're just going to blow torch the surface. So what the idea behind this is we're just cooking the very, very top, but because it's cured, the inside is still going to be nice and soft and chewy. It's cooked enough that it will just flake, but the inside and the bottom of it will just have a cured texture. So you get the best of both worlds. Just going to season that with a little bit of pepper. Won't need any salt because it's cured. And I'm just going to hit it with a little bit of English rapeseed oil. And then just lightly just give that a little brush all over. And then we're just going to add a little bit of the juice from the pickled lemon. So on there we've got lovely cherry tomatoes from the Isle of Wight. A few different shapes and sizes. So we won't need many. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. And we've got a lovely red pepper and tomato dressing, a little bit more oil. And the secret ingredient is just a little tiny hit of vinegar. Vinegar and tomatoes work really well, but just a little touch just to bring out the natural sweetness. One more thing, on top of that I'm going to add a little bit of mint. So now we're pretty much ready to plate up. So we've got our lovely trout. And we've got our beautiful dressed English tomatoes, first of the season. Be around right the way through up until usually about November time. So a few of those tomatoes dotted around. Nice little bit of dressed mint. So then, this is our beautiful green tomato ketchup. A few of our pickled lemons. These lemons that have been sliced very finely on either on a very sharp mandolin, or we do large batches and we use the meat slicer. A little bit of that red pepper dressing. Just a couple of little hearts of basil. So that slight bitter note right at the end. And finally that last little hit of English rapeseed oil. And there you have it. That's our cured trout with green tomato and pickled lemon.
Oh, classic. Strand comes up.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you doing? Sorry, chef.
Hi.
Yes. I actually did a drama degree.
This is my fish.